The United States underwent a rapid mobilization effort during World War I that included a demand for new flying fields that would support the nation's growing air power. In the beginning of World War I, there were only 3 military airfields in the U.S., but by the end of the war, there were almost 40. Payne Field, which was located in the field before you, was one of 14 primary flight training fields in America and was part of an unprecedented building campaign during World War I. Payne Field included 12 aircraft hangars and 54 other buildings, which were all meant to accommodate 100 aircraft and 150 student pilots. The hangar plan called for a 66 by 120-foot structure, 2 stories high, of wood framing, wood siding, and asphalt shingle roofing. Stacked double-sash windows were used to let in natural light. The hangars had 4 massive 16-foot long board and batten sliding doors that stood on steel rails and hung from a track that extended beyond each side of the building. Inside the hangars, the walls were unsealed with the wood trusses exposed. The hangar floor was a concrete slab. The hangars were painted white and each could hold 10 Curtiss JN-4 Jenny aircraft. The airfield buildings were situated in a rectangular pattern with the hangars in a row on the flight line and the remaining buildings in parallel rows behind them, leaving the rest devoted to the landing field itself. Let's continue driving around present-day Payne Field while I give you a little background. Time was the most important factor, and so fiscal responsibility was often sacrificed for the sake of speedy construction. Most contracts throughout the war were completed within a standard 60-day deadline. The fourth wave of airfield construction began in early 1918 as the third and last Signal Corps Site Selection Board began to select new locations. Payne Field in West Point, Mississippi was one of those locations. Mr. R.L. Betty, Secretary of the West Point Merchants Association, wrote the War Department requesting investigation of West Point as a suitable location for the aviation training school in July of 1917. The Signal Corps Site Selection Board arrived in West Point on January 12, 1918 to conduct its investigation. The main field site at Payne Field sat on about 533 acres of land just north of West Point. The site was ideal for aviation because it was located on a natural prairie elevated above the surrounding area. The wind blows even in the summer when just a few miles away there's no wind at all. This constant wind gave Payne Field a natural advantage over most airfields in America. During the tour of the site, the selection board faced temperatures that stood at 0. This inspection was made under the most unfavorable conditions, was quoted. Mr. Betty received a telegram on Sunday, January 13, 1918, from the board requesting a map of the field. Mr. Betty immediately flew to D.C. to work out the land deal and was back in West Point on the 27th to begin working with various committees and local businessmen to begin constructing infrastructure for the field. The 500th Aero Construction Squadron arrived in March of 1918, and the contractor's work was well underway. The local economy got a great boost from all the activity at Payne Field. One lady and her family made lunches for all the 100-plus construction workers. Mr. J.C. Bryan would send a wagon load of meat every day to Payne Field. The proceeds from the sale of this meat are believed to have enabled Mr. Bryan to become Bryan Foods, at one time West Point's largest employer. The construction work was completed by May 1st, 1918. The total cost of Payne Field was $891,340. This is some of what you see remaining today, the sliding rail for one of the hangar doors. Payne Field was named in memory of Captain DeWitt J. Payne, a native of South Bend, Indiana. Payne graduated from the University of Michigan in 1912 and from the School of Military Aeronautics at the University of Illinois. On February 1st, 1918, Payne was flying a JN-4D plane to aid a pilot who had crashed into the top of a tree. Captain Payne crashed his own plane in the process, and he died from the injuries sustained in the crash. The year following his death, the University of Michigan yearbook noted that the naming of the airfield in West Point, Mississippi, was a fitting testimony of the esteem in which he was held as a man, a soldier, and a flyer. Most of the buildings the remnants of the buildings that are left from Payne Field are seen in the woods here before you. Big Daddy and I drove around the roads surrounding the field so we could get you to a vantage point where you could get the idea of the scope and scale of this operation. I hope you can see some of the remaining pieces of the structures located in all the undergrowth. Most of these would have been hangars and hangar foundations and sliding rails for hangar doors. 3 hangars, a mess hall, and officers' quarters were purchased at auction in 1921 and re-erected in Tupelo. The hangar buildings at 308 South Broadway were used as cotton warehouses. They would have been located in the picture here. The only remaining building that is known to have been built from lumber from Payne Field is this lumber company building on Spring Street in Tupelo. This building was also once an airplane hangar constructed of heart pine. It was moved from Payne Field in 1922. It measures almost an entire city block at 27,000 plus square feet. A picture of the inside of the building on Spring Street. Less than 15 of the World War I mobilization structures continue to serve as airfields today. This is a picture of Squadron C in front of the hangar at Payne Field. We hope you've enjoyed this Mississippi story, Payne Field, one of America's World War I flight training schools. Most of the documentation for this video was taken from a West Point, Mississippi history book and from a website entitled Building a World War I Aerodrome, Payne Field, West Point, Mississippi by David Trojan, aviation historian. Thank you.